Hello, everyone, and welcome to another broadcast of Northwest Georgia Cryptics. I am Rick Weaver, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Blake Duckworth. Tonight we have Mr. William Bernett from Alabama. William has had three encounters with Sasquatch and also a Dogman. William's on tonight to tell his show, Blake, or tell his story. Blake, you got anything to share before we open up?
I hope everyone's doing okay. And as always, guys, if you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Hit the little bell notification. Leave us a comment if you don't mind. We're almost at 100 subscribers. Nowhere near where we want to be, but one step at a time. But no, that's all, Ricky.
All right, bud. Okay, ladies and
You'll have to
gentlemen.
forgive me tonight, guys. I'm tired.
Mr. Blake had to work a little this week. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, we're gonna bring Mr. Will on. Good evening, Will, and welcome to the show, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, man. You were telling me and Blake about your first encounter. What year was that?
That was in 2011, I believe is what it was. Yeah, 2011, around that time.
Oh, okay. That was a good year for Sasquatch. But
For sure.
The reason I say that, Blake,
seems to be a pretty active year. We've talked to a lot of people that had encounters in 2011. That's actually when I had my personal sighting. So must have been a trend in 2011.
All right, well, you want to go ahead and share with the folks what you were telling me and Blake?
Yeah, for sure. So my first encounter, like I was saying, I'm from Alabama, so I do a lot of stuff in the woods. I hunt, I fish. An avid outdoorsman. Like I do everything outside. So I kind of had an idea of what was in the woods. I mean, I knew, all the deer. I knew we had coyotes. I knew we had, I knew about all the creatures that were kind of in the woods in our neck of the woods there. Because my family owns a bunch of land and all, and I remember the day perfectly clear. I checked out of school because it was the first day of deer season. I was excited. I was ready to be in the woods. And being on our own family land, I was able to just go out and be by myself because I knew those woods. So no one was really concerned, because we all went out by ourselves. So it wasn't a huge deal. Except this day was kind of weird. There wasn't a whole lot going on as far as deer wise and all. So I had the idea that I was going to move to another stand that was on the other side of the ravine there because I had some previous I had like game trail pictures of deer and all over there, and I wanted to go over there and see if I could get something over there. And so I made my way down from my tree stand, and I started walking back down the ravine and all. And as I made it up to the edge of the holler there, like I was walking up, and like a pack of like 4 or 5 deer, does just like run out. So in my mind, I'm thinking it might be a buck or something, So I take a squatting position, and I'm just sitting there watching and waiting. And as I'm waiting, I kept hearing this noise, and it sounded way bigger than a deer. And so I just sat and watched and stuff, and I was ready to pop whatever came out of the woods. I mean, I was ready to shoot whatever it was. But when it did come out, I mean, I froze just in my tracks because what I saw just like amazed me. Because I'd always been like I've always even like from the time before that, like I'd always been like a big avid believer in Bigfoot, and I studied Sasquatch and all that. Like I love doing that. But out of the woods walked this creature that was every bit of 8 foot tall. I mean, had to be pushing 900 pounds, just broad. But the weird thing that stood out to me was it was like a white color, like it was almost like a pale white, which was kind of weird to me. But as I watched it, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, I was just frozen. I couldn't believe it. And it kept walking.
Got a question. How close were you?
I mean, I wasn't even 100 yards away, honestly. I mean, I was maybe 75 yards, maybe, if that far.
So so you were close enough. Did you see any facial features, or did you see the front of that, the creature, or the rear of the creature?
Yeah, I mean, so like where I was located at, it like walked out to where like it's so like its side was facing me type, and so like I was looking at the side of it when it walked out, and I didn't really see the facial features until it made its way up and it walked towards where the deer walked, and it got right into the tree line, and that's when I had to like back up or something, and like I stepped on like a stick, and so it kind of turned, and I was able to make out just a little bit of the facial features, and then it just turned back around and it kept walking into the woods. And needless to say, my hunt trip didn't last very long after that. I left. I backed out slowly. Kept it to myself for a long time, about 4 or 5 months, because I didn't know exactly how to explain it, and I didn't really know, what people would say at that time. And 4 or 5 months later, I talked to my grandpa, and I was like, "Have you ever heard of anything like out in the woods out there? Like, have you ever heard of anything crazy?" And he was like, "You mean the white thing?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "I've seen it too." And I was like, "You have?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, what do we do?" He's like, "Nothing." He's like, "Just don't mess with it." He's like, "Don't mess with it. It's not going to mess with you. I mean, it was here first, so we're going to leave it alone." And so,
did he tell you how long it had been since he had seen it?
He said that his first, see, it's kind of weird because I don't know how many encounters he had. He said his first encounter with it was like 3 years prior to that. So I don't know if he had multiple encounters with it or just the one. He did reference it as his first encounter, so I'm assuming that he had more than one encounter. But unfortunately, he passed away, so I wasn't able to really expand on that. But
so a lot of lost details there.
Right. But I mean, it definitely helped knowing that he had saw it too. But he did, and he did tell me that other people had saw it out there. So what that looks like, I don't know. I haven't been out there a lot since then, but I am planning a trip to go back here in a few weeks, actually, because we got some hogs down there that I've got to take out. So hopefully, maybe I can get some more answers. Maybe I can fiddle around, see with my other relatives, if anyone else has seen anything like that. But that was just kind of my first encounter that really opened my eyes, and it, like I said, I was a Bigfoot believer before then, but that really like put me on, full fledged, to doing that. But that was really, really a fun time as far as being the age I was a little scared, but at the same time I was more intrigued and fascinated, and I wanted to learn more about it.
Now, do you do research now, or or is it just something that's
No. I mean, I do research now. I mean, I honestly, I just got married 4 months ago, and my wife will tell you, it's kind of like an unhealthy obsession. I mean, I literally, I will research. Literally, I have binders full of just research that I've done. I've been on multiple different podcasts too, where I because I love just talking about it. I love hearing other people's stories. And so I'll research, I'll do podcasts, stuff like that. I'll reach out to people, I'll listen to their stories, stuff like that. But yeah, my wife would tell you it's a very unhealthy obsession. But yeah, I do a lot of research.
It's never unhealthy. You can never do enough research.
Oh, for sure.
Ricky.
But yeah, so that's what I tell her. I'm like, I'm fortunate that I've had 3 encounters, but she's like, I don't know if fortunate's the word. I was like, well, it's fortunate for me because I'm like, hey, a lot of people don't even have 1 encounter, so 3 is just a lot.
Well, and it just leaves you with more questions than answers.
Exactly.
So I mean, that just that doesn't help the fuel to the fire.
No.
Did you have something to ask, Ricky? I kind of interrupted you there. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to ask him, what were your thoughts actually, Will, when you first saw this creature?
Well, when I first saw it, I was really, what went through my mind first was, do I run? Do I shoot? Like, what is my next step here? Because I'm like, my gun is not going to do anything against this creature because obviously this thing is massive. I mean, and just the strides it was taking, I was like, it could probably catch me before I could do anything. So if I run, it's probably, if I shoot, it's going to kill me, and no one's ever going to find my body because no one knew where I was that day. I mean, my mom knew I was in the woods. She didn't know exactly what stand I was at. They didn't know, where I was at. I didn't have a phone. I mean, I was like, there's nothing that I can do, to this creature, besides just sit here and hope it just walks away. Because if I do anything, I'm dead.
Right. Going back to your initial sighting, when you first saw this creature. Now, a lot of people that we interview and talk to, they say that one of the main reasons for them not actually taking a shot at one of these creatures is that the creatures actually resemble more of a man, the facial features and all do, than they do a gorilla, ape, or whatever.
Right.
So what would you say as far as your facial features and how you're concerned?
Well, I definitely can see that because the little bit of facial features I did see, yeah, it did resemble more of a man. As far as why not to take the shot too, I mean, obviously because I didn't feel like my gun would do much against it, but also there's that part of me too where it's like I didn't want to take a shot either because I'm like I don't want to kill this thing. I mean, I don't want to, because I knew at the moment, like when I first saw it, like once I finally got my thoughts together, I knew what I was seeing. Like I knew it was a Bigfoot. And so I was like, on one hand, it's like, and that's kind of where we're at right now, even with, the whole field of, trying to find Bigfoot, trying to prove Bigfoot's existence. You run into the question, do you really want to prove Bigfoot's existence? Because, then you have a whole bunch of people going to the woods, trying to kill them, trying to, not let them live in peace, stuff like that. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the hard part. But yeah, I mean, I definitely understand because the little bit of facial features I did see, that first encounter, I could definitely say it was more resemblance of a man. But my third encounter, definitely can attest to that for sure.
Okay, you're talking about your multiple encounters. The other two that you had with the Sasquatch,
Right.
Did those creatures, were they the same creature or?
No. So the second encounter was kind of it was more brief. I was going out to my girlfriend at the time's house, and she lives out in the country. I mean, dirt roads. Her closest neighbor is like, 5 miles away, like real country out there. And I was driving down the dirt road, and I saw this thing in the road, and at first I thought, I mean, it kind of looked like maybe it was a bear or something. I was like, maybe it's a bear or something, you know, or maybe it's because it's kind of like crouched down in the road, and I thought maybe it was a bear or something. So I was driving close, and the closer I got, the thing like stood up, and I mean, I hit the brakes because I knew, you know, I'm like, this thing was, you know, 8.5 feet tall, and, you know, probably 700 pounds, and it like stood up and just looked, and within probably 2 strides, it had cleared the road, and there was a hill on the right side, and the hill was so steep. Like, me and her tried to climb it before, and I mean, it took us forever to climb that hill. Maybe 2 strides that had cleared the hill. So I was like, and I called her. I was like, hey, I kind of saw something. She was like, what? And I was like, I don't really know how to explain it. She was like, was it a Bigfoot? I was like, I think so. Like, which I mean, I knew, but I didn't want her to think I was crazy. And she was like, oh, she was like, no, she was like, there's Bigfoot out there. And I was like, what? She was like, yeah, we like when growing up, she was like, our parents wouldn't let us in the woods because of all the Bigfoot. She was like, because there's Bigfoot out there. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, apparently, she was like, my mom and my dad have had encounters and stuff like that. And that's a very interesting one, because just because of the cult, like the whole thing behind, like, so her house is on an Indian burial ground, which I found very interesting. As to why there's a lot of Bigfoot sightings out there, I don't know if there's any connection there, but I feel like there could be, honestly. But it was very brief.
When Blake and I have we do a lot of research into the parallelization between Bigfoot and cemeteries. One of our main areas that we do a lot of research at is an old rural cemetery. It's about 3 miles off the main road down in Bartow County at out in the lake. And we've had numerous encounters down there at that cemetery. A lot of people that we have talked to has had a lot of encounters at rural cemeteries. We even have a place over on Blue Ridge WMA, which is about probably, 50 miles from where we live here, that we go to. And we've also had encounters over there. So it's very interesting that you would bring this up.
Well, and you know, that has more of a Native American connection than like the cemeteries that we research at.
Yeah, but it's still, you know, still a place of rest. So we do, you know, they do it. A lot of people do encounter these things around cemeteries.
Yeah, connection with, you know, especially rural cemeteries is definitely there. I mean, they've been way too many sightings in rural cemeteries for there not to be some type of connection.
Right.
So this was your second sighting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What about your third sighting?
This is the tough one, because I haven't. You guys are the 4th people that I've ever told about this, just because it is a very tough one to talk about. I've told obviously my mom, a good friend of mine, and then a Bigfoot researcher, James Fay Bobo from Finding Bigfoot. Me and him, we talk, and I've talked to him about it, and stuff like that. But it's a really tough one to talk about. So just bear with me for a moment.
You're good.
But it was kind of odd, because it wasn't like necessarily where you would expect to see a Bigfoot, you know, to have a Bigfoot encounter. As in, it was in a park, but the park is like in the city almost. Like it was a weird one. But I remember me and my friends were driving around, and it was raining. It was cold. It was dreary. And we're like, hey, let's go to this park, because I wanted to, go out, take some pictures, stuff like that. Usually this park is just, it's got people everywhere. I mean, kayaking, fishing, and all that. I mean, it's very popular. And I remember we got out and we went down, and there's this trail, and we're like, hey, let's go walk the trail. And we were walking, and I noticed there was a tree that was like knocked down. That was over the trail, and I found it kind of weird because there hadn't been no storms or anything. So I was like, well, it's kind of weird. There's just a tree, it didn't look dead or anything. It's just a tree laying across the trail. And my friends, of course, aren't believers, so I didn't really say much of anything. I just, we just kept walking on about our business and all, and I went ahead of them and stuff like that. And I probably got within 25 yards of this tree. And this creature like peeked over. And it was like we froze. I mean, because it didn't look, it wasn't human. It wasn't human. It was hairy. It was obvious it wasn't a human. And so it was like it was knelt down almost, and it was looking at us. And my friends, they were a little ways behind me, and they had stopped, and they were frozen too. And all I could say, I was like, don't move. Like, I was like, do not move. And I remember they were like backing up slowly and everything. And I was frozen in fear. I was just standing there. And I remember this thing, and it was just looking at us. And for some reason, I got closer, and that's when rocks started being thrown. Like, to the point where, like, I was hearing the rocks go past my ear. Like, they were that close. And I remember my friends, I didn't see them, but I heard them. They had ran. And I just stood there, and I was frozen. And this thing was still like knelt down, and I just remember like staring into its eyes. And I don't know what it was about it, but it was like I got lost in its eyes alone. Like, this is the hard part. For probably what felt like forever, but was probably like 2 or 3 minutes, I don't remember. Like, I was literally staring at this thing's eyes, and I got lost. I was lost in its eyes, and I couldn't move. And the weird thing is like, I didn't, like, I was feeling, but like, it's like I didn't feel like it was angry. Like, I didn't feel like the creature was angry. Like, I felt like it was curious. Like, I felt like I could feel what it was feeling. And I felt like it was just curious. And I just remember the next thing I remember, like, I was being pulled away by my friends and all. And I was still like staring at this thing as they were like dragging me away. Like, it was weird. It was almost like I was in a trance in a way. Like, I couldn't move. And I felt like I could feel what it was feeling. And then I remember, like, they were dragging me away, and I was just staring at this thing. And I remember it stood up, and it walked through the woods, and it was just crazy. It was tough, and it was hard because after that, like, I shut myself off. Like, I shut off from everybody. I quit my job. I literally, it affected me so much. Like, I quit my job that I was at for 5 years. I shut off communication with my friends. I shut off communication with my family because I was still trying to process what I had saw. I was still trying to process what I'd been through. And growing up in Alabama, being someone who loves the woods, like, the woods is my safe place. But after that, like, I wouldn't go back in the woods. I wouldn't go back in the woods by myself. I didn't like being in the woods at all. And people would see me and they'd be like, "This is not you. This isn't you. You're always in the woods." That next hunting season, I didn't even go hunting. I've never missed a hunting season. I didn't go hunting at all. I refused to go. And it still hurts me to this day. It still haunts me because I feel like I lost a piece of my mind. And I don't remember. Like, that's the thing, is I don't. It was like I was in a trance, and it's just it affects me to this day because I can't remember, and that kills me. And I still don't like being in the woods by myself. I just recently, this past hunting season, went hunting with my friend. That's the first time I've been in the woods by myself.
Now, how close were you during this encounter?
I mean, I was probably 15. I mean, I could probably, honestly, I could have probably reached out and touched this thing. I mean, I was that close. But I got lost. I mean, literally, I stared into its eyes, and that was it. I was lost. It was like I couldn't move. I don't even remember, and that's the thing that kills me. Even talking about it, like I'm shaking right now.
We've interviewed quite a few people that have had similar experiences as to what you've had, and it's it's something that's profound. I had my first experience back in 1981, and the creature that I saw was about 40 yards or so from me. I was in a raft fishing with one of my buddies when we saw the thing. So I cannot, I'm a complete believer. I know that these creatures exist, but still, until this day, with the encounters that I've had over the years with these things, I have still never had an encounter like yours. And this is one thing that I would love to have that type of experience.
Right. Yeah. And see, that's I
mean, do you think what you encounter? I mean, I don't even know if you would consider it like mind speak. I mean, that would be. I mean,
that's the thing, is like I don't remember. Like, I wasn't thinking anything, but like it was so weird. It was like I was feeling what the creature was feeling. Like, I felt what it was feeling, and I remember, like, when I first looked into its eyes, like, I didn't see anger. Like, I didn't feel anger. I felt like wonder and like curiosity. And so but then after that, it's like, it was like I couldn't, it was almost like this thing had a hold of my mind and I couldn't do anything. Like, I couldn't move. Like, I was literally, I didn't even feel like I was in my body. It was so weird. Like, and that's what really bothers me, because,
it's almost like, I hate to use this terminology, but it's almost like it was a possession almost. But I mean, I guess that'd be the best way to describe it. I mean, it's not necessarily a possession, but I mean,
right.
I don't know what else to call it. I mean,
and that's the thing, is like I didn't really know what to even say. And like I said, it just affected me so like, I literally, I mean, for a year and a half, I shut myself off from everybody. I mean, I would get mad at people for no reason. Like, and it was more of just the fact that I couldn't understand. I didn't understand why, and what happened, like, and suddenly the woods weren't safe anymore, and it wasn't that I was afraid. It was more of, I didn't understand, like. And that's what bothered me, is because I like having answers. Like, I like having the answers. And
well, that's where, like, I guess the paranormal side of Bigfoot would come in. What, how, and why. That that's the bit. That's the main question about something like that is, what gives that type of ability, because that is some type of ability that creature has. What it is, what's it's meant for. What's its purpose. You experienced something that was very unexplainable.
Right. And I think that's the thing, is like I wanted, like, because I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that'd be a cool thing to do. Well, yeah, it was a cool experience, but it wasn't. Like, it affected, me, and it affected, and maybe that's just, because, I was 20, like maybe that's what it was. But I just, out of all my years of, research and stuff, like, I didn't really, because I'd heard, about stuff like that, could happen, that, other people have reported. I didn't really believe it. I mean, I didn't really believe that something like that could happen until I'd experienced it. And I'll be honest, I never want to experience that again. That's one sighting I wish I never had. And that's saying a lot, because I cherish the sightings I have had, because I feel like there's a reason, but I wish I never had that sighting. It would have saved me a whole lot. I mean, I broke up with my girlfriend. I did all that stuff because of the sighting, and
well, and I get where you're coming from, and I get where you're coming from, because I mean that's it messed with your mind more than anything. I get what you're trying to say, and it was more of a mental game and a mental thing than anything. It's not like it was a frightening experience or anything, but it mystified your brain.
Yeah.
You could, it just the processing of trying to explain to yourself what you experienced.
Right. And that's why I didn't. I mean, like I said, you guys are the 5th people I've ever shared that encounter with.
Well, thank you for sharing with us.
Because it is tough, but.
Okay, Will, you said that you felt that you were one with this creature. Could you tell whether the creature actually, what its thoughts were at that very moment?
Well, I don't.
And that's where really, it comes in, you don't remember it. So I mean,
right. Well, and that's the thing, is like I don't remember the exactitude of it. I mean, like I said, what I remember was when I first looked into its eyes, like, I just remember it wasn't angry. I mean, it was just curious, and it was more of wondering, and maybe that's wondering who, what we were, or why we were in this territory. I don't know. I will say that, my friends, because they weren't believers, they tried, to, think of logical reasoning, what it could have been, stuff like that. There was nobody there that day. I mean, we were the only people in the park. I mean, there was no way to even get down there besides going past us, and no one ever went past us. And I think that encounter, really, it is one of my favorite encounters. That's where it's kind of hard. It's one of my favorites, but I wish I never had it, because it's like one of those things that, a lot of people don't have there's a lot of people that don't get, have encounters, but to have an encounter like that is not, to be that close and stuff like that. Like, I feel like isn't super common. But
no, that's a class A sighting. I mean, it doesn't get, far as how sightings are classified. I mean, it don't get no quote unquote better than that.
Right, and like I said, I think the first time I talked about that sighting, my friend had actually written Bobo from Finding Bigfoot, and he was like, hey, like my buddies, he had a sighting that, really messed him up. Like, he won't talk to nobody. I'm worried about him, stuff like that. And so Bobo actually reached out to me, and we talked, and I opened up to him and I told him about it. He was like, I was like, I was basically like, hey, look, I don't know, like that's, I don't want people, because I'm like, I've had, 2 encounters besides that one. And I'm like, man, people have called me every name in the book already. So it's not necessarily about that. It's about the fact that this, looking back, I'm like, I could have died. I mean, literally, these rocks are being hurled at us. I mean, and I couldn't move, you know. But he was basically like, hey, he was like, you're not crazy. He's like, you know, that's one of the coolest, you know, sightings that I've ever heard about, you know. And he basically gave me, you know, confirmation, you know, stuff of basically like, you know, you're not crazy, you know. I've had, you know, encounters similar to that, stuff like that, and so that really helped. But yeah, I would say that was one of my favorite. That was probably my favorite encounter, but also my least favorite.
Like going back to your friends that were with you, you said that they weren't believers at all until this happened. So now,
No,
what are their thoughts on what took place?
So one of them is still he still tries to come up with logical explanations about what happened, what it was, stuff like that. My other friend, on the other hand, he's on the you know, Sasquatch. I mean, he's you wouldn't ever thought he wasn't a believer. I mean, he's huge into it now. He loves, you know, researching. I mean, we talk now, and you know, he'll reach out to me. He's like, hey, you know, how are you doing? You know, stuff like that, and he'll reach out to me and make sure that I'm okay still. But as far as my other friend, like I said, he's still skeptical. He still tries to come up with logical explanations. But I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, there's just no denying what it was. And I think it's more of he's scared, you know, because he's not going to have, you know, scientific answers, you know. And I think that's his main thing.
Right. I mean, anybody that has an encounter, especially one of that magnitude, it blows you away to the extent that you try to rationalize it as being anything other than what it actually was.
Well,
Exactly.
and when you have that close of encounter, there no mistaking what you saw. I mean,
Oh,
you know,
no.
there are misidentifications all the time. I mean, you know, especially with, you know, long distance sightings or
Yeah.
you know, road crossing sightings, or, you know, where it's a brief second. But I mean, when you're that close to something,
Right.
I mean, you either know what you saw or you don't know what you saw. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that, like I said, it's crazy looking back on it now, because it's like that thing could have just killed me if it wanted to. I mean, I was literally within. I mean, it could have reached out and just grabbed. I would have been dead. I mean, it would
well,
have been no problem.
and that's kind of proof of, you know, my theory on rocks, you know, rock throwing and stuff. It's not to hurt. It's more of
Right.
to deter or to scare, you know, whatever it's, you know, throwing the rocks at. I mean, because if they wanted to hurt you or hit you with them, I mean, they easily could. But, you know, anybody really I've ever talked to that's had encounters with rock being thrown, nobody's ever got hit with one, and it's always a scare tactic.
Right. And I think, you know, it's like I have kind of thought back. I'm like, you know, well, the location wise, but then I'm also like, you know, yes, it's a park, and yes, it's kind of in, you know, in town, but at the same time, there's like tons of caves back in there, like tons of like caves and everything, and I'm like, anything could be in those caves. I mean,
Well, not
and
only
there's
that,
plenty of food.
transportation.
Yeah,
You know, that's one of my biggest theories with caves. You know, they use them to travel, and that would be a perfect explanation. I mean,
exactly.
do those cave systems have other entrances? You know, do you
Yep.
know, or
Yeah, no,
so
they do.
there you go. I mean,
And I mean,
that would
there's plenty
explain
of food sources out there. I mean, and like it goes back so far. It's like there's parts of that place that no one's even ever touched. So it's like, you know, I think that's, you know, that's one of the things is, you know, a couple of people, you know, like my friend that doesn't believe still, like that was his thing too. It's like, well, you know, Bigfoot's not going to be right here in the middle of town. I was like, well, yeah, but if you know this place, I mean, there's caves all back there. I mean, there's, you know, food sources all over the place here. I mean, and it's like it goes back so far, like you don't even know what's back there, you know. But to this day, I still haven't been back to that park. I mean, I've still never been, even when it's slam packed busy, I won't go back there. I will never go back there.
You know what you saw. I mean, that's
Exactly.
the main thing with eyewitness encounters like that. I mean, you know what you saw. Don't let anybody ever, make you feel like, all because of location or anything, you
Right.
didn't see that. You know what you saw.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they're like, well, why didn't you take pictures? Well, look at where I'm at. I mean, my first encounter, I was hunting. I didn't even have my phone on me. I mean, I didn't have a phone at the time.
When you have an encounter like that, that's not the first thing that goes through your brain most of the time.
Right.
Your brain's trying to process what's going on. I mean, and heck, most of your encounters, that's one reason we don't have good video evidence is because heck, most of your encounters happen so fast.
Right.
One, that thought don't even cross your mind, or two, if it does, you don't have time.
Right, and I'm like, my third encounter, like, who's to say if I took my phone out and took a picture of this thing when I'm standing there, right there at it, like it would have, went crazy, and killed me. Like, like why would I think about that first? Like, and I think that's one of the things that's frustrating, is because, and it's like, my encounters were all they just happened. I wasn't going out there looking for Bigfoot. They just happened, so I wasn't ready.
You were doing your normal thing.
And that's something that 90% of the reports, well, I'd say 85% of the reports that Blake and I received of encounters of this type, it's where you're basically in the woods.
Going about your normal day, or
your normal day when you have the encounters. That's like with my first encounter. I was fishing, wasn't thinking a thing in the world about seeing anything. When I first saw the creature, I thought it was a bear, but when its paws came up out of the water, they were human-looking hands about twice the size of my hands. They were covered in hair down to about the middle knuckle. The finger parts looked leathery like, and they had disposable thumbs just like we have. And this is what really keyed me in on, hey man, wow, I'm not looking at a bear. But this happened in about maybe a 50-second span. And
hey, I'm sorry about that. My internet's acting up.
Oh, that's quite all right, man. We have that all the time. Blake, you were fixing to say something?
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. Talking about encounters, or let's not say encounters. Let's say sightings, actual visual sightings. You're talking about people going just about their normal day and having encounters. Now that I think of it, yes, you'll having. I know people and ourselves have had encounters when we're doing research, as you want to call it, but I don't really. I mean, I know I had my sighting, but when I had my sighting, we weren't necessarily. I mean, yeah, we were doing research and out trying to gather evidence or whatever. But most people don't have a sighting when they're out, actually
Right.
Bigfoot hunting or doing research. Yeah, you'll get evidence, but as far as visual sightings, they're very rare when it comes to actually doing research.
Right.
Most of the time, it's when you're not expecting it, when you're just going about your own business.
Yeah.
Will, you'd mentioned something about having a Dogman encounter. What?
Yeah, that was kind of fun. So we were at Land Between the Lakes up in Kentucky. It's a beautiful place, and we were just kind of driving through. They've got like this big like wildlife like preserve type deal, with like buffalo stuff like that. And so we were driving through and all, and me and my friends were like, "Hey, well, let's just pull off, we'll go walk around for a little bit." And so we started walking around, and I noticed there was like these weird like paw prints. And I was like, well, that's weird because it doesn't look like a coyote. I mean, it's way bigger than a coyote. And there's no wolves up here. Like,
Sorry to interrupt you. How big were they?
How big were they?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know, like perimeter wise. I mean, they were probably like that big. I mean, they were pretty massive.
That was about the size of the ones we seen that time, Ricky.
Right.
And
ahead,
and
sorry.
and I kept noticing them, and so I didn't really pay much attention to them. And we just continued walking and all, and I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, and I like looked over, and it was like this canine looking creature, but it was like on two legs, and I was like, well, that's weird. And I thought I was seeing things because I was pretty tired. I'll be honest, like I was pretty tired that day, so I was really thinking I was seeing things. So we just kept walking and all, and I noticed like it was like moving, and so I turned and I looked, and it was like this canine on two legs, but it almost it was like humanoid, like it looked like a human too. And so I was like, well, that is odd. And so I just like, I told my friends, I was like, hey, let's like stop for a second or whatever. And they're like, what? And I was like, am I seeing things or is there something there? And like their eyes just got like that big, like, and they just stopped or whatever. And I remember one of the girls like screamed or whatever. And this thing like looked over and it just like took off up the hill. I mean, just like super fast. And I remember like we just like hightailed it back to the car or whatever. And I remember we went up a little ways and there was a park ranger there, like for the preserve or whatever. And I asked him about it. I was like, hey, like, have you seen those like weird paw prints back there? Like, and you know, I was like, we saw kind of like this weird looking creature, you know, it was like almost looked like a canine, but on two legs. And so he made us take him back and show him the paw prints and everything. And he like called some buddies over, like some of his like buddies and all. And next thing I know, like they're all like over there or whatever. And we're like, all right. So we went back to the hotel for the night or whatever. And we went back the next day. And I asked him about it, and he was like, "What are you talking about?" And I go back, and all like the paw prints, it looked like they had been like just like covered up almost. Like it looked like they had been just erased. Like it looked like they had like done something. And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" You know? And I don't know if like maybe like they didn't want anyone to get scared, so they like, you know, messed them up or something, or like what? But it looked like they had like intentionally like destroyed them. And then he acted like he didn't know what I was talking about. And I was like, dude, we were just talking to you yesterday. And it was just kind of weird. But I mean, we saw it for maybe, you know, maybe a minute.
Government bureaucracy at its finest.
Do what, Ricky?
I said, sounds to me like government bureaucracy at its finest.
And I was like, well, but I mean, it was a group of 12 of us, and we're like, we know what we saw. So, I mean, it's like there's no denying what we saw. And we went back or whatever, and I did some research when I got home, and turns out there had actually been a lot more Dogman sightings at Land Between the Lakes.
Right.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, I was about to say that's a pretty common thing in that area, from what I've heard.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure is. Yeah, we actually had a guest on the show, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 months ago, that just in that area up in there, and they had actually encountered one while camping one night. This thing had actually came in and circled their camp, and he said that it had scared his wife so bad she had went and locked herself in the car and left him and his son sitting out there. And he said this thing on up nearly till nearly daylight had just kept just going back and forth around their camp. He said the thing never actually came out to where they could see it, but he said that you could tell that it wasn't a Sasquatch per se.
Right.
So yeah, they are.
We've never had a Dogman encounter, but we have had two things that happened that I can't really explain when it comes to definitely not being. So basically, that's the reason I asked about the print size, because we come across some prints down at the area that we do a lot of our research there in Bartow County, that were some really big canine tracks. They looked really weird. And back in 2010, 2011 era, they were actually a lot of reports coming out of this area of dogman. You know, I don't know how true they were. I don't know, I don't know the extent of it. But, then we seen the tracks, and the night before that, we were actually camped down there, and we heard this vocalization. Like, we've heard, Bigfoot howls down there, but this was not that. I don't know how to explain what it was. It was canine-ish / like a laughing hyena, almost a laugh. I don't even know. It was, if I can imagine what a dogman sounds like, that's what I would imagine it sounds like. I don't know what it was, and I ain't saying that's what it was, but in my brain, that's what it was.
Right.
It was one of the most weird, one of the weirdest things that I've ever heard in my life. Now, I've hunted, lived here and hunted the mountains in North Georgia since I was like 7 years old. And I've hunted with my dad, my uncles, cousins, been all over these mountains, have encountered a lot of wild things over the years, but never until Blake and I encountered that down there that night have I ever had that type of encounter. And it was,
I'm not going to say it was a dog man, but just in my brain, if that's what it sounded, that's what it was to me. I mean, whatever it was freaky and was definitely not normal.
Hey, you got that right, completely. We actually had a guy from Tennessee with us down there that night, and when this thing screamed out, Blake and I had actually, we do paranormal research too, and we'd walked up into the cemetery, and all of a sudden this thing screamed out with this horrendous, evil sounding laugh. I've never heard anything like it. But when it did, the guy that was at camp with my youngest grandson, they were on the radio hollering to us, "Hey boys, y'all get back down here, get back down." We get back down there, and the guy from Tennessee was freaking out. This guy's in his 30s, but man, he was, or 40s, I think now, but he was freaking out. It just scared him to the extent that he couldn't even get out of camp at night.
Don't get me started on my paranormal encounters either, because we'll be here for a while. We'll be here for a little bit.
That's
hey, man, that's what we're here for.
I do Bigfoot research, but I'm definitely more involved in paranormal.
I've got a couple doozies for you then, for sure.
Have you ever heard of Old South Pittsburgh Hospital?
Yes, I have.
I'm a volunteer there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I love my paranormal stuff.
I did too. I mean, I still do, but I got it to an obsession to the point where it almost took my life. So I kind of had to back off of it. But that's a whole nother. That wasn't really paranormal. Story. That was more demonic. So that's for another time.
Yep. I completely understand.
Share it with us, bud.
What's that?
I said, go ahead and share it with us.
Well, that was something that that's really heavy. As far as I was in college, I love paranormal stuff. Like I binge watch every paranormal show there is. Like I research paranormal like all the time. Like I loved it so much. I love the idea of not having answers. Like I love the idea of there's something being out there that we can't explain. I thought that was really cool. And I remember it was like Easter weekend, and everyone had went home except for me and a buddy of mine. And he was like, "All right, well, I'm going to catch up. I'm going to do some schoolwork ahead of time." I wasn't that bright of a student, so I'm like, I'm not doing no schoolwork on Easter break. Like I'm going to go watch my shows, So I went up and I grabbed my laptop and I ran downstairs, because he was hanging out, and I was like, "Well, I'll watch my show while you do your homework." And I was watching a paranormal show that had been binge watching on Netflix. And I remember I went on Netflix and I clicked it and I was like, sorry, we can't play this title right now. I was like, well, okay, whatever. The Wi-Fi must be crappy. So I was like, well, I'll just restart it, stuff like that. Again, same thing. Sorry, we can't play this title right now. Okay. So I did it again, said the same thing. I did that about 4 or 5 times. I kept saying the same thing. So I was like, well, that's weird. So I restarted my computer, everything, disconnected from Wi-Fi, reconnected, everything like that. And it kept saying the same thing. So I clicked on like a regular sitcom and it played just fine. And so I clicked on another one, played just fine. So then I went back and I clicked on a different paranormal show. It wouldn't play. I was like, well, something's going on. It won't let me play my paranormal shows for some reason. Well, all right. So I was like, well, that's fine. So I disconnected everything, did it again, reconnected, and finally it let me watch it. Well, as soon as it cuts on, I mean, I felt like every ounce of water from my body was drained. I mean, I literally felt like I was so dehydrated. I thought I was going to pass out. And so I was telling my friend, I was like, well, dude, I'm not feeling well, So I ran up and I grabbed me some water and I came back downstairs and I started drinking the water and all. And as I did that or whatever, I shut off my computer and all, and I started watching basketball. Well, I started watching basketball and I feel like I'm overhydrated. Like I feel like I'm bloated, and I'm like, what? Like, this is weird. Like, I was just now feeling crappy, and now I'm whatever. So I'm like, well, that's fine. So I went up. Anyway, we went upstairs, went to bed or whatever, and woke up the next day, and he's like, hey, man, you gonna go to church with me? I was like, well, yeah, that's fine, because I hadn't really found a church over there, and I was like, well, that's cool, So we went, and I remember we went to the Sunday school class, and it was me, and like there were empty chairs beside me, in front of me, and behind me, and like the closest lady to me was like this little 90-year-old lady, and she was probably like 4 or 5 chairs beside me. I was like, well, that's all right. So anyway, the Sunday school teacher was talking, and he was like, he said, Christianity is the #1 religion in the world. And I just remember this voice, like it was just it's like a deep, like evil, like mocking voice said, not for long. And I was like looking around, I was like, who said that? Like, really? Like, who said that in the middle of Sunday school, And I was like, I know this 90-year-old lady didn't say it, like, And so I left early and I went back to the dorm, and I just sat there, and my friend came over. He's like, hey, man, you all right? And I was like, did you not hear that? He was like, hear what? I was like, that voice. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, it said not for long. And he was like, dude, there was no voice. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, anyway. And so I remember I was watching my girlfriend at the time. I was taking care of her fish for the weekend or whatever because she left. And she was coming back, and she called me, and she was like, hey, I'm on my way back. Do you want to meet? And so we started talking, and she's like, hold on for a second. She's like, this car is like riding my tail. And I was like, well, be careful, And she's like, well, I got to go. I was like, well, okay, be careful. And just a little bit later, she called me back. She's like, hey, like that car passed me. She was like, she said, it's so weird. She's like, it looked like it had like demonic symbols on the back of it. And I was like, what? Like, and she was like, I'm not feeling well. And I was like, what? You said you were feeling fine earlier. Like, you said everything was good. She's like, I don't think I need to be talking to you right now. And I was like, well, okay, like that's odd. So she got back, and she was walking in. She was like, meet me in the parking lot. So I was like, all right. And I met her in the parking lot. She was like, man, I'm freezing. I'm like, well, it's Illinois. Like, it's freezing. Like, yeah, I get it. It's snowing. It's cold. She's like, no. She's like, I'm cold on the inside. She's like, it feels like there's an 18-wheeler like sitting on my chest. And I was like, well, that's weird, because I was just not feeling like that earlier today. And so we go, and we're sitting in the lobby of their dorm, and the light like above us starts flickering on and off. And she was like, I gotta go. She was like, you need to leave. And I was like, well, what? Like, why? Like, and so I'm walking back, and I looked over, and there's a bookstore there, and it's all locked up because everyone's gone. And I see like the silhouette of a being there, and I was like freaked out. Like I ran inside, and I was freaked out. And so I remember I called my mom and I told her about what happened, and she was like, "You need to get someone to pray for you right now. Like, you need to get someone to lay hands on you." And I was like, "Well, there's no one here right now." She was like, "But," she's like, "Well, you need to call pastor. You need to call somebody." I was like, "Well, whatever, you know." And I had noticed throughout the day I was getting angry. For no reason. I mean, I was just getting mad, like, and I remember, like, later on that night, it was probably, I mean, it was late. It was probably 11:30. My pastor called me, and I remember looking at my phone, and I was just pissed. Like, I was so mad. Like, I was angry at him. Like, I don't know why. Like, I was so mad at him. Like, before he even said a word, I wanted to, like, cuss him out and, like, just tell him to shut up and stuff. I mean, it was bad. And so I remember, like, answering the phone, and he said something. He said some stuff, and I wasn't really listening. And I remember my roommate wasn't home yet, and so my friend, he had seen, you know, kind of me getting more angry. He had seen something different was going on, so he was like, "Hey, you need to come bunk with me in my room." I was like, "Okay." So I went and laid in his room. I went to bed that night, and that's when the nightmare started. That night, I had the worst nightmare I've ever had in my life. I mean, I was in the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and all I seen was this demon. I mean, I saw it. I saw this demon, and it like came through the mirror and just grabbed me. And I was screaming, and no one could hear me. I mean, it was bad. And I remember just from that night forward, I mean, the nightmares just continue to get worse and worse. I mean, really bad. And this all started, I believe, that before I'd started college, the road that I live on, behind it, there's a road, and there's a bridge on that road known as the Ghost Bridge, because I live in a military town now, and back in the 20s, a soldier went crazy and killed his wife and their child and threw him over the bridge. And now people claim that they see her like on the bridge, and they can hear her crying and everything, looking for their child. And I remember me and my mom were on our way to town, and I took a picture. I took a Snapchat and I sent it to my friend, and my friend sent it right back to me. And he was like, "Do you not see this?" And I was like, "What?" And he circled it. One of the scariest images I've ever seen. It's literally, it looks like the silhouette of almost like a clown. It's so weird. Like, it looks like there's a clown behind me. And I don't know why, but it literally just looks like a clown. It's so creepy. And my mom, she sent that picture off to a paranormal team that she knows, and they asked her a bunch of questions, and they were like, "We've ran everything. They were like, honestly, we can't come up with an explanation for it." They're like, "We think it's demonic." And I remember she had called me. This was probably 2 months into this whole ordeal, and it just continually got worse. I mean, I was cussing out my friend that didn't do anything to me. I was skipping classes. I was just angry. I was not a happy person at all. I would have nightmares constantly. I was afraid to go to sleep because of the nightmares. I didn't eat. And I remember my mom had called me, and she told me, she said I had to delete the picture. And I got so mad. I got so defensive. I was like, I am not deleting this picture for nothing. Like, I would not. I was so mad. I was like, I can't delete this picture. And I remember like the guy who runs the paranormal team, he had called me and he was like, these things can clasp on to small things like that. He's like, you opened a door. He said, you've got that picture now. He's like, and you want, he said, you're so obsessed with this paranormal stuff that it opens up a window. It opens up a portal. And it just kept getting worse. I mean, I honestly don't know how I had any friends after this. But I remember my friend that I'd bunked with, and poor guy, I'd cussed him out so many times. I had done so many violent things. My pastor, he had called me. He was like, y'all need to go in your room and pray. Y'all need to go and like open up Bibles, pray, stuff like that. Well, it's fine. So we did. And this was a little bit, before everything went real bad. And so we did that. And I remember I was standing there praying. This was like in the first month or so. I was standing there praying. And I just remember getting pushed. Like, I mean, I was violently pushed into my dresser. And my friend's like, are you okay? I was like, no, dude. Like, I just got pushed, He's like, you didn't fall? I was like, no, I was pushed. And the first night after I heard that voice, I had marks on me. I got scratched pretty good by something. I mean, violently. And like I said, by the third month, I mean, it just continually got worse. I didn't sleep in my room for 3 months. I mean, I wouldn't go in there. And I remember one day my friend he went to take a shower, and I was sitting there and I was like, well, I was still trying to fight this thing. So I'm like, I'm going to try to listen to worship music, stuff like that, So I put in my earbuds and I was listening. I turned on some worship music, and as soon as I did, my ears just started ringing. I mean, it felt like I was on an airplane. They were popping. They were burning. I had to take it off. I was like, I can't do this. And I remember one day he was like, you're going to this event with us. And I was like, I'm not going. Like, I'm not going to that church. Like, I'm not going. This was a different church. I was like, I'm not going, because the last place I want to be was at church. The last person I wanted to see was a pastor. Like, I did not want to go. And I remember I went. And after the event, everyone in that room got together and they laid hands on me. But this one guy in particular came and laid hands on me. He prayed for me. And I just remember I was shaking. And I remember like I was angry, but I was shaking. But I was like, I was like torn. Like I was feeling good, but I was just torn. And I remember like, I just felt this release when we got done praying. Like I just felt this release. And he was like, dude, he was like, I've got to tell you, he's like, when I put my hand on your chest, dude, you were on fire. He said, you were burning up. He was like, and then I just felt released. And I was like, I know exactly what you mean. I was like, I felt that release. And I need, like, if it would have went on much longer, I wouldn't be here. I mean, I was to the point I was about to kill myself because it was just that bad. And I got the release. The picture got deleted. I mean, it didn't get deleted, but it got put away. Never, I mean, it, and that literally, I wouldn't be here today if it would have went on any longer. I would have died. I mean, I was to that point. I mean, I was starving myself. I mean, I was just in a bad place. I mean, literally, I saw this thing, and it's so hard because it's so hard to fight something you can't actually see. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the hardest part. Like, you can't see it, but you know, like it's there, it's tormenting you, and you can't fight it. That was rough, for sure. That was probably the hardest 3.5 months of my life.
Well,
Wow.
at least you got it took care of. That's all that matters.
Exactly.
It's just crazy that, I mean, so you think it came from that one location?
Well, I think it was me. I mean, obviously, I think the picture had something to do with it, but I also think the level of my, like, when I say obsessed, like it was bad. like really, really bad. And I think that opened up a portal too. Like I think that opened up a door, because I was that driven, that obsessed with
You
it.
made yourself very vulnerable, pretty much
Right.
is what you're saying. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
So
And
you,
I
act-
think
you
all of
actually
that just
feel,
kind of
Will,
ended
that
up.
you actually feel that you were possessed by this entity?
Oh, 100%, 100%. Yeah, for sure. And it wanted me to kill myself, and I was at that point. I mean, I wasn't even I wasn't myself. I mean, I've never said a cuss word in my life, and I was cussing out everybody for no reason. Just
So what actually brought you out of this?
The
prayer. I mean,
prayer,
really, that's really what happened. I mean, literally the whole school was, I mean, they would stop, like, because it was a Christian school, so they would stop chapel and everything, and everybody would just be praying for me. I refused to go to chapel. I wouldn't go to class. Everyone prayed for me. I mean, they were still praying for me. And, you know, I'm a believer, you know, I'm a Christian, you know, I'm a believer, stuff like that. I thought it was pretty easy. I mean, I thought, you know, because growing up and seeing it in the movies, they're like, oh, well, all you got to do is say the name of Jesus and, you know, it'll go. Well, yeah, but sometimes you got to fight. Sometimes, you know, you've got to fight.
That also depends on the strength of the demon as well.
Right. And so it's like you got to fight. I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
And it wanted me to kill myself. I was at that point.
Blake and I have a very good friend, Neil Kay, who actually does paranormal shows on YouTube, Nocturnal Nations. Go on and check him out. Neil's a very good guy, but Neil has actually encountered quite a lot of what you say that you've encountered.
Right.
And I think you'd really find that interesting.
He's an ex-pastor as well, and I mean, like, I guess that's. I'm glad I know some of the people I know, because some of the places I do go to, I mean, at least I've got people that, if something was to ever happen, I got people to help if need be.
Right.
I mean, I know a certified demonologist and everything. So I mean, I know it don't make it any better, but it gives you a little peace of mind that you got people that have a little power.
Right, for sure. But I mean, like I said, at least not be, you know, at least I got the release, and at least, you know, that it's over. You know, it's a part of my story now, and I feel like I could help other people, you know, that are going through something like that. But again, there's not a whole lot of people that go through it. That I know, so it's like
No. I mean, demon possessions are very, very rare. I mean,
right.
I can't remember the exact, like, it's like 0.1% or something like that are actually demon possessions. It's very, very rare. But when it does happen, it's really bad.
Right. For sure.
You know, I've never heard of a demon possession that went really good. So
exactly, yeah.
Right. Doing paranormal research, as Blake and I have, we actually this was in 2010, I guess, 2011, somewhere in that area. We actually were at the cemetery and actually brought a spirit home with us.
Mm.
And it was
it wasn't a malicious spirit or anything like
no,
that.
it wasn't really malicious. I mean, it was just
a.
Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, nothing bad came of it, other than just random things happening where we were living that never happened before, you know, this visit to the cemetery. So, you know, I take it something followed us home.
Right.
And I mean, it eventually just stopped. So I don't know if us continuing to go back down there, it hits the ride with us back down there or what. Like, I'm tired of living here. I'm just gonna hit the ride back. I mean,
yeah, and we had one of the weirdest things happen here at the house the other night, and I told my roommate Michael that Gene, or the guy that we actually bought this property from, I told him that Gene had come back and paid us a visit, but he gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning, goes in the bathroom, and the hot water in the bathroom had been turned on. And he and I, the only two here in the house, the hot water had been turned on, and it had run so long that there was no hot water in the hot water heater at all. And just a few other strange things about. I've laid here and heard the refrigerator open. Things get thrown out of the refrigerator on the floor. Dishes moved around in the cabinets. So, yeah, we're dealing with a little problem here at the house right now.
Yeah, I dropped one off at your house, Ricky.
You probably did.
I shouldn't joke like that. Lord forgive me.
Probably something you brought back from South Pittsburgh with you.
Hey, let's not be jinxing nothing now.
Well, guys, we're in a little over an hour. I'm going to end the show tonight. Will, we'd like to invite you back, buddy. Anytime you'd like to come back. One further question I've got to ask you. Now, you said you've done research. Are you actually doing research in the woods around where you live, or?
Well, I have a team, but with COVID and all, we kind of just took a break just because they were afraid of it. I still go out occasionally. Me and my wife now will go out and we'll do a little bit of research. But as far as research, in the woods go, that's about it. Just me and my wife will go out and do some stuff. But a lot of my research, now unfortunately has been based on, just other people, witnesses, stuff like that, different encounters, stuff like that. But yeah, I'm getting a trip put together with my team that we'll be able to go and check out some properties and all stuff, and some wood and all stuff.
Right with Blake and I.
If you ever want to make a trip to Georgia, definitely would like to put something together and
for sure. Yeah,
you'd like to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Hey man, we got plenty of areas to go up here. We've got Blue Ridge. We've got Pigeon Mountain over at Lafayette. Quite a few areas around here that.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, we live in the Bigfoot hotspot or the general area of Georgia. Like, I mean, you don't get a better place than where we live. I mean, we live 20 miles, 30 miles from Blue Ridge Mountain Range, and I mean that whole Cohutta Wildlife Management area over there and everything. I mean, that's what it's known for. So,
and according to my wife, I'm a Bigfoot magnet. So apparently, I'll just come out there and we'll see something. So.
Hey man, sounds good to me. Just get back with me if you decide you want to come up on the weekend, and we'll
for sure
put a trip together and go.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that.
No problem. All right, everyone. We've come to the close of another episode of Northwest Georgia Cryptics. I'd like to thank Will for being on the show tonight. Will, you have a standing invitation, man, to come back and join us anytime you want to.
Well, I appreciate that.
Share. If you run across any evidence you'd like to share with the people, just come back on and let us know. Blake, do you have anything else, bud, before we close out?
As always, guys, thank y'all so much. If you guys don't mind, if you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button. And I hope everyone has a great evening. And that's all, Ricky.
Again, I'd like to thank Will Bernett for being on the show tonight. Will, we really enjoyed your encounters. It's through people like you that we continue to have our shows every Wednesday night. Remember, folks, next Wednesday night we will have Blake, who does Mr. Richard from Texas. He'll be back on with us next Wednesday night, again at 10 p.m. Thanks everybody for watching. Everybody stay safe. This is Rick Weaver for Northwest Georgia Cryptics, and good night.